coming to you live from his padded cell high atop Bethel Church, the most heralded, the most despised talk show in all of human history. This is the talk show hell hates. This is Pastor Mike Online. And here we are coming to you live from our top secret broadcasting bunker here at Area 52. This is Pastor Mike, and I'm online, and I'm live with you today. The talk show Aliens Hate. The more you listen, the more you know why. Good to be with you today. We got furious, blinding blizzard yesterday. Man, we got almost like 2 inches of snow. It's horrible. But it makes things slick here. And I personally, I'm getting to the age now where I'm gripping things when I walk. When I go down steps, when I walk on slick surfaces, because falling for me is not something I want to do anymore. When I was 12, 15, 20, and limber and a stuntman, we used to wreck our bikes on purpose. We had a little empty lot in the neighborhood I grew up in, and we had a trail there. We had a big oak tree. My dad used to work on riverboats. He was a riverman, and he brought home this rope that was about that big around, had 2 loops on the end of it, and they used to tie up barges with it. And he brought one of those home, and I made a swing out of it. Stuck a little 2x4 in the bottom loop. Had it hanging from a tree, and we'd go barreling down this trail through this empty lot, headed into the woods on our bikes, doing 90 miles an hour. We'd get to the rope and grab a hold of the rope like Tarzan and swing and let the bike go tumbling off into the woods. That's why they were busted all the time. I don't do that anymore. So when it gets a little scary out there to walk and stuff in, everybody stay home. So, but it's melting off today. It was about 19 this morning. It's melting off, especially on the parking lot, which is black. That sun hits it, and that's snow in Missouri for you. No matter how much you get, 3 or 4 days, it's going to be mostly gone. So, anyway, let's talk. And I've got a bunch of stuff here to read. Let's talk. Let's talk about some UFOs today. Can we do that? One article specifically really got my attention yesterday. And then there were some other things that have been reported recently that have come out in the last few days. So I'm going to put some of these articles over to the side because I'm going to save them for last. And some of these, I'll try to put them up on the screen for you. Anything I get like that, if I don't use it immediately, well, then I'll just go ahead and put it in Evernote. And once I have it there, it's there. I've got articles going. I started using Evernote, I think, back in 2014. And so a lot of articles that I get, ideas that I get, thoughts that go through my mind and so on, I try to jot them down. That way I don't lose them. I remember years ago, I have all these notebooks, and I would write down the ideas for a Watchmen script on paper. And I had this whole Watchmen script written out, and I call it The Lost Watchman, because I was ready to start working on it, putting it in PowerPoint and everything like that. Couldn't find the papers. Have no idea where they went to this day. And I don't even remember the subject now. But it's The Lost Watchman. It's the one I never did, and I have no idea what it was. I can't remember it. So Evernote's been pretty good to me. Let me put some of these up on the screen for you today. Let's see here. No, that's the one I'm saving for later. How about this one? Yeah, that'd be a good one. I think I have that in Chrome. People have been seeing there's been a a wave of UFO sightings lately. And for those of you who are still, you don't believe in them, you don't believe nothing, I will tell you that most of these people who see them did not want to see them. They are biblical. I talked to a pastor this weekend. He has a relative. I'm not going to identify in any way who I'm referring to, but he has a relative who is in the U.S. Armed Forces and believes in them because his relative is in the U.S. Armed Forces and has seen and has told this pastor friend of mine, I can't tell you what I've been seeing. I can't tell you. I can't relate to you. I cannot share with you because it is top secret, but I have seen things. The aerial school, I'm still waiting for this documentary to come out. But there was another UFO documentary that came out. I saw it on YouTube. You have to buy it. It's not free. And so I purchased it from YouTube. It was a documentary on UFOs. And it did a feature of the aerial elementary school in Zimbabwe back in the early to mid 90s. And if you don't remember that story, for those of you who you refuse to believe that there is anything to UFOs whatsoever, and understand me, I don't believe Martians living on Mars. This is prophetic. It is biblical. It is things that God specifically mentioned in the Bible that has happened and is going to happen. And I've done things on that, and I will continue to do it because it is what I see plainly in the scriptures. But the aerial elementary school, it's a mixed school, white and black. They speak very good English there in Zimbabwe. And at this school, you had elementary age school children. There was a teachers' meeting. So you had all of the teachers in a meeting with the headmaster of the school and maybe one or two of the, I don't know who worked at the school. I don't know what their job was, but they were watching the kids while the kids were out on a break in the play yard. 62 out of over 100 students saw it. This silvery, metallic, disc-shaped object landed in the bush just beyond. It's an area they're not allowed to play in, but it landed in the bush just beyond. They saw it come down over some electrical wires and land. And the next thing they know, there are these 2 or 3 little gray creatures, big slanted eyes, coming out of this vehicle. And the children described them as just sort of floating and skipping above the ground and moving about. 62 children out of over 100 saw it. And with several of them, the beings from this particular disc made eye contact with several of the students and attempted communications with them, filling their minds with pictures of like global catastrophes, the forest burning and the end of the sort of, like you see in the book of Revelation, terrible things happening to the earth. And the students reported that they felt like the aliens or the beings, whatever, were trying to communicate that the humans were destroying the planet. That is a very, 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 very common idea reported by people who claim that they have been abducted, or at least given the idea. Devils can plant ideas in people's minds. If you don't believe that, go study Micaiah, who told Ahab how he got deceived. A spirit put it into the Bible says the mouth, but the brain controls the mouth. And all 400 of the prophets to Ahab spoke the exact same thing. And Micaiah revealed the source. It was a spirit that was in them that put that in them to say that to Ahab. So, I cannot say that people are literally being pulled up in ships. I don't know that. I know that they're being given the images that they later recall under hypnosis. That much I believe. At least that much I believe. But several of these children, once they made eye contact with these beings, images being transferred into their minds. It got the attention of Harvard psychiatrist Dr. John Mack, who traveled to Zimbabwe, and interviewed on film many of these students. He had them draw pictures of what they saw. And of course, you're dealing with elementary school children. Really, I don't think anybody above the age of 11 or 12. Pre-adolescent children. But they're drawing practically the same thing. Now, some 30 years later, this documentary and the actual aerial school documentary has been filmed. I don't think it's been released. It was supposed to come out last year. It didn't come out last year. I'm still waiting on it to come out. I don't know what the holdup is. Maybe they're wanting funding. I don't know. But after 30 some odd years, not one of the 60 plus children that saw this have recanted their story. Not one of them has said, we all got together one day and decided to play a trick on our teachers, and that was it. Yeah, that was nothing there. We made that up. Not one of them. And the idea of aliens with grayish skin about 3 to 4 feet tall with big almond-shaped slanted eyes, that image had not yet really been popularized until Whitley Strieber wrote his book Communion at about the same time. But it's a sure bet that nobody in Zimbabwe read the book. And there was no internet back then, so the exchange of information back then, if you remember, isn't like it is now. Now, if a picture of an alien comes up, it's all over the world in a matter of days. But it wasn't like that back then. So these children, to this day, have not they've interviewed them as adults now. They still recall it. They still recall the images. They recall the events. They recall it. And they said, this happened. You can believe us or not. We're telling you it happened. Some of them have suffered greatly as a result of it. And they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to deal with it. Very, very evil. This is an evil presence, people. A very evil presence. So when you have stories like that, there was a school in Australia, similar event. Children out on the playground, they see this disc-shaped craft land. And all of a sudden now, some teachers and some students see this. This was back, I think, in the 60s. And the next day, you had guys in suits coming to the school telling these children, you didn't see anything. Where did these guys come from? Our own military has been studying these since 1947, since Roswell, with various projects, Project Sign, Project Grudge, Project Blue Book. And now we find out a couple of years ago that the Pentagon, because Nevada Senator Harry Reid allocated $22 million to the Pentagon. Pentagon comes up with a program called ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. And the new term is not UFO, it's UAP, Unidentified or Unknown Aerial Phenomenon. We have to get, because flying saucers, when it first came out, Kenneth Arnold said that the ships that he saw looked like saucers skipping across the water. So the term flying saucers came out, but then flying saucers got dragged through the mud, so they invented unidentified flying objects. Well, that's been dragged through the mud, and now we have new terms. In 10 to 15, 20 years, they have new terms. But the point is this. Our own military spent $22 million not studying what kids saw on a school ground, examining photographs, video, and radar and reports from United States military personnel who have seen these craft, have engaged these craft in some way. Lieutenant Commander David Fravor is one of the most, he's been on the talk shows, he's been in the documentaries. He engaged what they called the Tic Tac. It looked like a big, giant, white Tic Tac. They said there was a disturbance in the water. There was something under the water. And that's a whole nother topic to deal with this. I watched another documentary the other day of a woman who came out and said that she was part of a government program that studied underwater. Do I even want to say this word? Underwater bases. Pretty interesting story. Can they be underwater? According to Scripture, I think so. But anyway, Fravor said there was something under the water, and this Tic Tac was hovering above what was going on underwater, and when he engaged it, it started playing with him. And he caught part of it. He caught it on video. That video has been released. It hasn't been leaked. It was released by the Pentagon. It was given to Tom DeLonge, who hired Lou Elizondo. Lou Elizondo was the Pentagon person who was running the ATIP program. He resigned from it because he felt like he was getting nowhere. He said there's people in the Pentagon that are... Here's what Lou Elizondo actually said. Lou Elizondo got ticked off because there's guys in the Pentagon who believe that these things are evil. Well, that would be me. And he didn't like that. So he quit. Well, Tom DeLonge, the rock star, Blink-182, hired him, hired a bunch of other Pentagon, Department of Defense, CIA, NSA guys to be part of a company called To the Stars Academy. They're the ones who have put out this series on the History Channel, Unidentified. They claim that they have what they're referring to as tangibles. You know what that word means? We can hold it in our fingers. They have actual tangible products that they say were not manufactured on this earth anywhere. And they're trying to look into the engineering of it to see if we can get any use out of it. He's got guys, Tom DeLonge has guys working for him that have been working in the United States military, Department of Defense, on warp speed technology from Star Trek. I'm going to read you this article here in a little bit. So we're not just talking about a fringe movement. We're talking something serious, very serious, that people have been seeing. Let me show you this. Let me show you this video. Put it up on the screen. Let me enlarge this. Strange night flashes, vibrations, and humming noise in Ohio town spark talk of UFO. Let me do a full screen of this. Notice this is a guy and his, I guess his wife, taking the trash out one evening. This is a security camera, a Ring. Ring.com is the company that produces these security cameras. They're motion activated, so when the guy walked out to grab his trash, it immediately started recording, and this is what he recorded. Notice the flash over here in the sky. Caught their attention. Look at his actions. Now, I don't think it does it again after that, but I mean, watch this guy. Drops the can. That's a dun-dun-dun. So, that's a little odd. Let me get rid of that. And then I've got some more here that I'll show you. Let's see here. No, that's not it. Where is it? Where is it? Well, I'm not finding the articles I wanted to show you. Hang on a second. Let me go to this. Let me click that. And let's see here. Okay, here we go. Here's another one. String of lights seen in sky near Charlotte sparks UFO debate. What was it? Light clusters reported by multiple people east of Charlotte, North Carolina. I've got kinfolk out there. Wonderful people, good people, love our country. I think Evernote lets me zoom in on this now. Hang on a second. Let me try this again. There it is. No, it's not letting me do it. Anyway, these lights here, let me read this article. Multiple people have reported seeing an odd string of lights at night near Charlotte, igniting talk of UFOs on social media. Photos shared Saturday on Facebook show what appears to be a string of lights floating over North Carolina's Indian Trail community. The area is Union County, just southeast of Charlotte. Anyone know what these lights were tonight? And what you can see is these little blue dots up in the sky, blue lights up in the sky. Nobody knows what they are. I know what that is. It's two people kissing. Let's see. What else can I show you that I happened across? Yeah, let's do this. Let's talk about this. This is Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos in a Star Wars. Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos spark space war in row over Amazon's internet satellite plan. SpaceX's Starlink satellites have already drawn criticism from astronomers who say they are too bright. People have seen them. A string of satellites in a row going across the sky. My son saw them and sent video to me and said, "Dad, what is this? Is this UFO?" No, it's Elon Musk's satellites. They're supposed to give everybody high-speed internet from space. SpaceX boss Elon Musk has accused Amazon chief Jeff Bezos of trying to hamstring his Starlink system, a chain of satellites designed to provide internet access to areas with no cable access. Musk's SpaceX company wants to place Starlink into a much lower orbit than originally planned in order to provide faster download speeds. However, Bezos has planned for his own rival system. It literally is a Star Wars going on. There was another article, and I figures I can't find it, that was talking about these billionaires, and it may have been this one. I don't see it anywhere, but it was talking about, I've mentioned this before, these billionaires that are talking about ways to get off the planet. Literally ways that mankind can get himself off the earth and live somewhere beyond this earth. Now, is that pure science fiction? Is it pure fantasy? Is it pure imagination? According to the flat earth people, it's not even possible because we live in a snow globe. They believe the heavens above are a hard shell over the earth, with the moon being a projection on that screen. It's not real. It's a projection from a projector. Some of the flat earth people say NASA puts it up there every night. Come on, you can do better than that. But what does God say? Well, God actually foresaw, I believe, a time when man would use different means of trying to escape God's judgment. See, I believe that down deep inside, I think Romans 1 tells us this, that people know who the Creator is, but they bury that. They hide it. They remove themselves from it. They corrupt that idea. And they worship and serve the creature more than the Creator, Romans chapter 1 tells us. So I think that there's something in everybody. Paul talked about when the Gentiles break the law, God's law, it shows that the law is written in their hearts. Literally, in our DNA. Everybody around the world knows it's wrong to steal, it's wrong to kill, it's wrong to commit adultery, it's wrong to lie, it's wrong to dishonor your parents. You don't have to be a Christian American to believe those things, or you don't have to be a Jew to believe those things. These are universal ideas. The idea that there's a God above us who we should honor and glorify. That is a universal idea. It's among every people around the planet. And so I think that in some of these people's thinking, especially the people who have the means to do it, they're trying to achieve a situation where they can leave or escape what they believe to be the judgment of God. Ray Kurzweil. The documentary that was made about Ray Kurzweil several years ago and his idea of transhumanism, you can tell that the death of his father had deeply affected him. His father was a conductor of an orchestra, very talented man, and Ray had a very strong relationship with his father. When his father died, it did something to him, and he says, I don't want to die. I want to cheat death. So he is working on ways that mankind can escape the judgment of God that come to us by way of Genesis chapter 3. Because man chooses sin over God, man has to die. For by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin. So Kurzweil's working to escape the wrath and the judgment of God. You have these billionaires doing similar things, whether it's Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. They're trying to achieve similar things, and in some cases, get us off of this planet, because God is going to pour out vials of wrath upon the earth, and terrible things are going to happen. Now, get this idea. I mentioned to you before, John Mack, when he went and interviewed these children at the Ariel School in Zimbabwe, that's what they reported to him. John Mack had written a book when he had interviewed and put under hypnosis, hypnotic regression, all these people that said that they had been abducted. John Mack wrote in his book, that was a common theme, that the aliens were somehow telling the people that they had abducted, we're trying to help you. We're trying to save you. You are destroying this world that you're living on. If you've ever watched The Day the Earth Stood Still, either version of it, the 1950s version or the 2000s version with Keanu Reeves, same story. A galactic federation of some kind has been monitoring Earth. Now that we have nuclear bombs, we have the ability to destroy our planet. Shame on us. We're probably not going to make it. They just don't want us up there in the stars with them. And the point of both versions of the movie was, well, maybe we can evolve. Maybe we can change. Maybe we can adapt, and we can be more like you guys instead of being like our evil selves. Maybe we can be more like you gods who live up in the heavens. That was the idea. And the thought occurred to me that I'm working on a new Watchmen series when Jesus said these false Christs were going to arise. Well, in the 1950s version of The Day the Earth Stood Still, Klaatu, the alien who looks like a human, dies, bringing his message down from the heavens to the earth, is killed because of that, taken aboard his ship, resurrected by Gort, his robot, and then lives again and ascends up into the skies with a warning to mankind. And I'm just going, that's Christ. They're depicting the Christ story in this movie. So anyway, what about man going to space? Because some people say it's not possible. Nobody's been to the moon. We don't have satellites up there. That's nonsense. What does God say? Well, let's see what God says. Amos chapter 9. He said, I saw the Lord standing upon the altar, and he said, smite the lintel of the door, that the post may shake, and cut them in the head, all of them. And I will slay the last of them with the sword, and he that fleeth of them shall not flee away, and he that escapeth of them shall not be delivered. And notice this. He's saying, anybody who tries to flee from my judgment, it won't work. Though they dig into hell, thence shall mine hand take them. Now let me stop right here. I have this idea of the earth and the universe around us that comes from what we know of the stars, the moon, the orbit of the moon around the earth and the sun and its relationships and all that stuff. And I am what you would refer to as geocentric. I do believe that the earth is the center of this universe of God's creation. It's amazing to me how angels, that when they fall from heaven itself, they don't land in another galaxy. When they're kicked out of heaven, which is above the universe, the heavens, when they're kicked out of heaven, they don't land on Mars, Venus, they don't land on Jupiter, they don't land on the moon, they don't land in some other unknown distant galaxy. They land here on Earth. So I think the earth is the center of everything in God's creation. And I think this earth is unique in all the universe. I don't think there's another place like this earth. In Genesis 1:1, God didn't create the heavens and the other earths and this earth. He created the heavens and the earth, two distinct places. And here, in this earth, below us is a pit. And whosoever is in that pit, it is a limitless depth. Now, I don't know how to explain that other than, did you watch the Ant-Man movie? The first one and the second one, the Ant-Man and the Ant-Man and Wasp. Dr. Pym, this is a Marvel movie. Dr. Pym creates a way, he's got this suit that it can alter your size. And he's asked, what happens if I go smaller so that I can fit between molecules? And Pym said, you don't want to go there because then you'll get into the quantum world. And you find out that him and his wife did it years ago, and his wife's still stuck down there. And so in the Ant-Man and Wasp movie, Ant-Man goes to find his wife because she's in the quantum world. And he said, you keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and you're falling. He said, once you go down there, you get lost. Well, that sounds like Job 10. Job described in Job 10 the realm of the grave or the dead. And he said in Job 10:21, before I go whence I shall not return, even to the land of darkness and the shadow of death. Well, we know what that is. That's hell. A land of darkness as darkness itself and of the shadow of death without any order, which means that in that realm, the rules don't apply. A land where the light is as darkness, he said. So in the quantum world, the rules don't apply. So it is a place of perpetual falling. Satan is going to be cast in there for 1,000 years. There are devils in there now that have been cast in there and are falling and have been falling for, let's say, thousands of years. And in Revelation 9, they are going to be released. Somebody wrote me a letter because they said it looked like that in the book of Revelation, after the 1,000 years, Satan is loosed again, and that's true. That would be Revelation 20. In Revelation 20, and I know I'm going all over the place, but that's where my mind is today. I'm racing through thoughts. In Revelation 20, we have an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. He laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. Cast him into the bottomless pit, shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that he must be loosed a little season. And then after that 1,000 years, verse 7, when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. So he does this immediately after falling for 1,000 years. He's let out, and he immediately gets his old army again, Gog and Magog, who I believe are spirits. And he says, let's try this again. Well, it doesn't work. So they're all cast into the lake of fire after that. So you are right in reading that in the book of Revelation. When Satan is released out of the pit after the 1,000 years, he goes to deceive and gathers an army one more time. And when he does it this time, God's not playing around. He's not going to put him in jail, not going to sentence him to a 1,000-year sentence to reform him. He's just going to throw him in the lake of fire, and that's going to be the end of it, period. But think of the angels that fall from heaven. The devil himself, as he falls from heaven, he lands on the earth. Once he lands on the earth, He's going to be thrown into a pit, literally in this world somewhere, and falling down into an everlasting falling. Even down into the quantum realm, I believe. It's just a theory I have. Trying to make sense of what the Bible is trying to tell us about the universe. I think the Bible is a perfect blueprint of all of this creation. I think it's telling us how God made it, what its use is, how it works, where everything is. All these stories about UFOs, they have to have a source. There has to be something in the Bible that explains to us what they are. And I believe that. So we go back to Amos now. Amos chapter 9. So, what if we have technology that allows us or allows someone to try to escape by falling into a dimension that they think would cause them to avoid God's judgment, like the bottomless pit? Though they dig into hell, then shall mine hand take them. You know, the phrase wormholes, do you know what that means? When astrophysicists refer to a wormhole, it means that it is a gateway between two faraway points in the universe that instead of traveling hundreds or millions of light years of distance, that a tunnel opens up and allows you to take a shortcut right over there to it, like a quantum tunnel. That's what a wormhole is. Did you know that God said something very similar to that? Micah 7:17, they shall lick the dust like a serpent. Dust, I think, could be a reference to quantum particles. Quantum particles are the stuff that atoms are made of. We thought that atoms were the smallest things in the universe. But then they realized that the atoms were made of something. And that something is called quantum, because quantum means the quantity of everything. Quantum particles are what make up atoms. And in the quantum world, it doesn't obey the same rules that we obey in this universe. If we want to travel from St. Louis to Kansas City, you have to get on Highway 70 and drive about 3.5 hours. Okay? Unless you're a quantum particle and you can quantum tunnel and you can literally travel, you can be in St. Louis 1 second and Kansas City the other second and not occupy any of the space on Highway 70 between the two. Okay? So God said, they shall lick the dust like a serpent, and they shall move out of their holes like worms of the earth. Literally wormholes. Now, back to Amos chapter 9. And if this is too much for you, this is how my mind works some days. I just think this stuff through. I like to know that the secrets to everything are in our Bible. Everything. So he said, though they dig into hell, then shall mine hand take them. Though they climb up to heaven, thence will I bring them down. Now, it's not the first time that that's ever been thought of. What were they dreaming up in Genesis 11? A city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven. Let's get off of this earth, because the flood had already happened. And so maybe they're thinking, well, God did it once, and if he does it again, we need an escape. Because to me, it's just easier if you just follow Jesus Christ and are saved, and you don't have to build spaceships to go to heaven. I'm going to be carried there by angels. Amen. They don't want to obey God. They don't want to obey God, but they don't want his judgment and his wrath either. So they say, let's build us a city and a tower whose top may reach into heaven. So the ISS, the International Space Station, is a city in heaven. It has a population. It has rules that govern what they do up there, and it's from different countries. So it's literally an international city. It has its own special, unique set of rules and protocols that they have to follow up there. So it literally is a city in the stars. So back to Amos 9, God said, if you go up to the heavens to try to escape, thence will I bring them down. God said, you can go up there if you want. I'm not going to stop you, but when I get ready to judge you, I'm going to pull you back down. Now, the very next book over, Obadiah, he's speaking to Edom, and he said, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high. That saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? That sounds like Lucifer. How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations, God said. And he said, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. Well, we already have a nest up there. And now we're wanting to go farther with that, way farther. Farther than we've ever been before. Past Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, the 7 stars, the 7 planets. Manly Hall, in the Secret Teachings of All Ages, speaks of these allegories and these myths all throughout Earth's history of a god or a hero or a goddess or something who was down in the lower parts of the earth, down in hell, and had to get their way through 7 gates or 7 portals to rise up to escape the underworld. Believe it or not, in the science of alchemy, alchemy is supposed to be about turning lead into gold, but that's not what it's really about. It's about turning humans into immortals, gods. And they used these alchemists back in history, used symbols so that they didn't actually write out their secrets. They used symbols to do it. And in the alchemical process of turning lead into gold, it was 7 steps, 7 stages. So you had a bar of lead here, and you had to do this, and do this, and do this. You had to do 7 things to it in order to get it to turn into gold. And they drew that out in various ways that if you didn't know the language of the symbols, you would never figure it out. And one of the symbols that they used was 7 minors, not minors like young children, but 7 miners who worked to bring treasures up out of the earth. Snow White and the 7 dwarves. What were the occupation of those dwarves? They were miners. And that's what I have a book on alchemy, and that's what it said. It said the symbolism of the 7 dwarves was they were miners, and the allegory is that the woman is the prince or whatever, the woman is brought back to life by the work of the 7 miners, going through the 7 gates to ascend man up. So I had this thought. What if, and the beast has 7 heads, which are 7 kings. But it didn't say if those kings were literal earthly kings, because we know that there are spiritual kings. We know that in Revelation 9:11, dun dun dun, put that button. In Revelation 9:11, these spirits in the bottomless pit have a king over them, who is the king, who's the angel of the bottomless pit. So people were looking for earthly kings to fulfill these roles of the 7 kings that the 7 heads of the beast represented in Revelation 13, Revelation 17. And I submit to you that they are spiritual kings, represented by the 7 stars or the 7 planets. So what if, and I'm just giving you a lot of what ifs today. What if that itself represents the idea of man ascending past the reach of our sun, passing beyond the 7 planets? Because our sun represents who? Jesus Christ. He is the one who, he is the Son of righteousness. He is the sun and the shield for us. Okay? I thought about this too. That Jesus is the creator. He's the Son. And by him, all things consist. Colossians 1:17. He is before all things, and by him all things consist, which means held together. When you're making pudding or gravy, okay, you don't want your gravy or your pudding watery, so it has to have a certain consistency. It has to have a certain stick-togetherness. That's what the word consist means. And so Christ is the one holding everything together. So think of the atoms. In all the atoms that make up all of the molecules of the universe, you have the electrons, or you have the protons and the neutrons in the center, and then what spins around them? The electrons. What holds them in their orbit? What holds the electrons and keeps them from flying off? What holds them to the protons and the neutrons? The fact that the electrons are just far enough away from the protons to not be pulled in by the charge of the protons, because positive and negative charges attract one another. The protons could feasibly pull the electrons down into it and hold it there, but they're far enough away so that they are basically in orbit around the protons. You follow me? What does the moon do with the earth? If the moon got to a certain spot to where it got too close to the earth, what would it eventually do? It would fall down to the earth. It would destroy the earth. It would fall down to it. But it's just far enough away so that the earth's gravity holds it in its place, its consistency. So go one more. The sun. The sun is much larger than the earth, and it has a higher gravity. So what does it do? It holds all of the planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, all the asteroid belt, It holds all of them in a certain spot, circling, because Jesus, who looked like the sun in Revelation 1, had the 7 stars surrounding him. You follow me? Isn't that cool? I think it's cool. So here's what I'm getting at. Jesus is the sun, and by him in our world, this whole solar system consists. The sun sets the gravitational rules for where all the planets are, how fast they go around, and so on. The fact that they don't stray away, they can't, because the sun is holding them in their place. So, what if man gets to the point where he can go beyond, away from our sun, which is Christ? Do you see what he's doing here? So we have at least 3 witnesses in the Bible that tell us that mankind's goal is to get away from this, to leave. Go put himself higher and higher and higher and higher so that he is like the Most High. He gets his ideas from Lucifer. For he says, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. That's the devil, and that's man as well. That's what's in our nature, our depraved nature. So, is it possible that what's being worked on right now is a way to get at least some people off of this world? I believe it is. Here's another story. It's getting a little warm in here. That sun, it could be 20 degrees outside, 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside, or 10 degrees outside, and be hot in here because I'm right next to the roof. That right there is the roof of the church where my finger is. So I got to get a little air flowing in here. Yeah, it is heating up in here. Let's do that. Let's see here. That's already on. So let's do this. Get a little air going so it cools off so I don't sweat. There we go. While I do that, I'll read this. Leaked government UF photo. That should be in my notes somewhere, because I printed it out from there. Let's see. Here it is. Let me put that up on the screen for you. You'll want to see this. This is pretty interesting. What is hovering cube-shaped object? The article says an unclassified image shows unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP. It's likely that an FA-18 pilot captured the photo while flying above the Atlantic in 2018. The photo is said to come from a 2018 report issued by the government's UAP task force, the official unit that replaces the Pentagon's secret UFO program. So they shut down ATIP, and Elizondo had said that he believes that the Pentagon is running a similar program, but he didn't know under what name and what title. But now we have the Pentagon openly saying, yes, we're doing this. The leaked photo dates back to 2018 when it materialized in an intelligence report from the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, the DoD's official unit that investigates UAP sightings. In August, the Pentagon approved the establishment of the task force as the first on-the-books government UFO program since a 2000s-era unit, which is ATIP, lost its funding in 2012. However, multiple sources confirmed with Popular Mechanics earlier this year that the unit remained active in secrecy after its shuttering. According to the debrief, the UATPF has briefed government and military officials on UAP, UFO, flying saucer, matters. For the last 2 years, the newly surfaced image appeared in a report issued by the task force during that time. The debrief's Tim McMillan, a contributor to Popular Mechanics, learned of the photo's existence from a defense official who has been verified as being in a position to have access to the UAPTF's intelligence reports, he writes. 3 other government officials confirmed with McMillan that the photo, which was shared on a secure network used by the U.S. intelligence community, comes from a 2018 task force report. Now, anytime something is leaked from the government, there's at least an 80% chance, at least 80%, that it was leaked unofficially, officially. Which means that whatever area of government it came from, they'll never say, yeah, we leaked it. But they leaked it. It was done deliberately. The word disclosure, the idea that certain, a growing number of people in our country want our government to come up front and be honest and say, this is what we know about UFOs. I don't see that happening. What I see happening is paco a paco. Those of you who play music, you know what that means. Little by little. It means that the government is slowly going to release things that they say they have no explanation for whatsoever. They can't identify it. They don't know what it is. They don't know where it came from. But here it is. And in some of these cases, the stories are scary. If you watch the Disclosure event, which was Stephen Greer's move that he made back in 2000, I think, somewhere around in there, where he finally got these guys to talk. Guys that were in the military, guys that were in the CIA, Department of Defense, NASA, things like that. Gordon Cooper always talked openly and honestly about, number one, when he was flying in space, he saw a UAP and reported it. And then Cooper, because he had a top secret clearance, was working at a particular Air Force base, and they had a film crew out filming, I guess, landing maneuvers or something like that. And he said this ship came down. They got it on film. A ship, a saucer disc, landed. 3 little legs came out. Doors opened. Creatures came out. Went back in, flew up. The camera caught the whole thing. He went back to the office, made a few phone calls, figured out who wanted it. They said, develop the film, get it to us stat. They developed the film. He looked through it a little bit through the window, saw it was very clear images of this saucer landing on this Air Force base, and sent it up to it. And the guy asked him, he said, did you ever follow up with that? And he said, who would I follow up to? He said, once I sent it up the chain of command, I have no idea where it went. He said, but I know what I saw. I know what it was. I know it was there. This is a trained astronaut. He knew exactly what it was. He knew that the Russians didn't have it, the Chinese didn't have it, North Koreans didn't have it, Israelis didn't have it, we didn't have it. Now, boy, I don't know. I can't read this one yet because it's linked to the one I'm saving. What time is it? That's what some of the rest of these are, too. They're related to the big story that I was going to share with you today. So, do you believe that it's possible that things could be appearing in the sky that are not of this world? Do you believe Well, let's take a look at Scripture. And let's get an understanding from the Bible. We'll go to Ezekiel chapter 1. But before we go there, let's do this. Do a study of the word chariot or chariots in the Bible and wheels. And I'll explain why in a little bit. Like this one, some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God. Now, in the 21st century, this was written about 1,000 years before Christ came, back when armies used horse-drawn chariots. But does anybody now in modern warfare fight with horse-drawn chariots? No. Not when we've got tanks, armored vehicles, nuclear bombs, things like that. So, does this verse still have any relevance or meaning for us today? Absolutely. When you look at the very next place in the book of Psalms where the word chariots is used, Psalm 68:17, the chariots of God are 20,000. That means God has more cars in his garage than you do. Even thousands of angels. The Lord is among them as in Sinai in the holy place. So look at this verse. This verse is telling you that God's chariots are not like our cars. Our cars are lifeless objects made of steel, iron, whatever, composite material, and leather seats. Not living entities. But God's chariots are living beings. He calls them angels. So now we go to Ezekiel. With that in mind. And see, this is what blew Eric von Däniken away. He grew up, was he from Sweden or Switzerland? One of the two. And he attended a Roman Catholic church and probably a parochial school, but he had a problem because he read in the Bible that God rode a chariot. And he said, now, if you're God, what do you need with a chariot? Now, does God need one? No. But it's his choice, right? He can have one if he wants. So I don't have a problem with it. So von Däniken just refused to believe in the God that he was reading about in the Bible. And what he did was he transfigured God into an extraterrestrial, he said. God is an extraterrestrial because God does not need to go around in chariots. So, and he's getting this idea from Ezekiel 1. From the north, which is the key to all of this. Something about the north is the entrance point, the exit point of the direction of heaven. I'll put it that way. It's the direction of heaven. We have a fixed star at the north called Polaris, the North Star. Doesn't move. It's always north. That's how you navigate. So, also out of the midst, there came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man. They had 4 faces, and they had 4 wings. So we know that they fly. The number 4 tells us that they are of the spirit realm, not the 3-dimensional world, the 4-dimensional realm. They are above time and space. Now, I'll explain the fabric of time and space in a little bit, too. Their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their feet were like the sole of calf's foot, and they sparkled like the color of burnished brass. My son saw a brass-looking, glowing object flying across the sky late one night. My mother, I didn't know this for years. She knew that I was interested in UFOs. Never said a word to me about it until a couple years ago when we lived in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. That's where I was born. We lived next to a cotton field on the other side of the levee that separated I think the Arkansas or Mississippi River away from the town of Pine Bluff. So we lived on the floodplain side. And there's this little lake. It's like a horseshoe lake next or close by to where I grew up there. And my mom and her best friend, our neighbors, they were coming back home one night, and there was this glowing orb that was hovering above this lake. And they saw it, and they slowed down to take a look at it, and all of a sudden it just shot up into the heavens. She never told me all these years till a couple years ago. And I'm, Mom, why didn't you tell me? That's the same color, burnished brass. Let's see here. Let's go down a little bit. Let's get to the wheels. Verse 15, now as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures with his four faces. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of a beryl, and they four had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were the wheel of a wheel in the middle of a wheel. The wheels themselves, the Hebrew word for that, I believe, is the ophanim. I think. Let me look that up. Blue Letter Bible. And I'm sharing this with you for a reason. It's because these wheels are actually worshipped. Believe it. If you can believe that. These wheels, and I can believe it. These wheels are actually worshipped. Blue Letter Bible. I'm looking up. Yeah, here it is. Let me put that on the screen for you. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of beryl, and they four had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel, and the Hebrew word there is ophan. So if I were to click on that and pull that word up, it's the word ophan, and when you have multiple of them, you have the ophanim. And it says wheel, chariot wheel, wheel in Ezekiel's visions, wheels in the 10 bases beneath the lavers. When Solomon built the Ark of the Covenant, when he built the pedestal for the Ark of the Covenant to sit on, he built a chariot in his temple. There was a chariot with a sea of glass on it that the Ark of the Covenant was to rest on. It had wheels and axles and everything. He built a chariot for God's throne to rest on in his temple. And people worship the Ophanim. The Jews, especially the Kabbalists, believe that they are a type of angels that can be communicated with. The wheels themselves. How is that possible? Because it says in verse 19, and when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them, and when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Whithersoever the Spirit was to go, they went. Thither was their spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. Now, I do have something to read to you on that one. The spirit of the living creature, and the spirit is always life. There's never a dead spirit. When a spirit is in something, it has life in it. And let me read, let's see here. I have a quote from Whitley Strieber somewhere, and somebody else. that said, let me see if I can find it again. Well, I thought I had all this organized, and I don't. UFO. Doing a search through my Evernote. That's what I like about it. I can search and pull up everything that I have on UFOs. And I got a lot of stuff on UFOs. And that's Whitley Strieber. Yeah, here we go. Let me put this up on the screen. This is from Colonel Philip Corso, reading a book that was written about him. Colonel Philip Corso interviewed with his son, who was privy to information given by Corso on his deathbed. Now, Corso wrote the book the day after Roswell. Corso not only saw the bodies of the 3 gray aliens that were pulled from the wreckage at Roswell, but he was also given custody of some of the tangibles that were from that wreckage and told back by his commanding officer, General Trudeau, to make use of them somehow, some way to benefit the Army. He said, let's get with our private contractors, AT&T, McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, other companies. Let's get with them and let's give it to them. Let them work on it, figure out what it does and what can be done. We want the primary technology, but if they want to use it to get patents on and call it their own inventions, that's going to be their payoff. So Corso said that, saying that in the autopsy of the alien, he had 2 brains, one with an integrated circuit, and that the alien and the ship operated as one entity. Now, you think about what we just read in Ezekiel. Whithersoever the spirit was to go, they went. Thither was their spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. And so Corso said that the alien and the ship operated as one entity. The alien was the power source of the ship. Now think about that. In the Bible, what was the power source of a chariot? A horse. The horse powered the chariot. The chariot didn't go anywhere unless the horse pulled it. And we still use that term now to describe how much power an engine has. We call it horsepower. So the EB, which was the extraterrestrial biological entity, was part of the craft, integrated into the craft. Science cannot describe it. He said the ship was a living entity. Corso said this. And he said when it died, it simply turned from blue to brown. And that matches what you see in Ezekiel 1. That the wheels were actually alive. Because the spirit of the living creatures, or if we use the terminology in Revelation 4, which is describing a similar or the same thing from a different perspective, the spirit of the beast was in the wheels. Wheels, the discs, the ophanim. Stephen Greer, the Hebrew word for chariot is Merkabah. And it just so happens there is an entire branch of meditation Kabbalah called Merkabah mysticism. And what it does is that it puts you, the meditation person, in direct contact with these Merkabah chariots. Hence, these angels. Now, our common image of angels is that they wear long robes, they have blonde hair, and they're white-looking beings, and they look like men. But that's not the limitation the Bible places on them. The Bible actually tells you that even things that we would consider not having life in the spiritual realm, they actually do have life. The wheels are living. The chariots themselves are living because they are angelic spirits, angelic entities. They are alive. So, Bob Lazar. Robert Lazar was a scientist. He was hired by EG&G back in the late 80s to go to work for a government contractor that was working at a secret base that nobody had ever heard of in the late 80s called Area 51, which is like right next door here to where I am. And Lazar went out there. They said the first several days that they got him out there, they had him read in over 100 different debriefing documents on the Earth's history with unidentified flying objects, extraterrestrial biological entities, and these 9 saucer-shaped craft that they had in these hangars that he was going to be working on and where they came from. One of them, he said, archaeologists dug up. It had been buried for thousands of years. They found it somewhere and dug it up and pulled it out, and they were all trying to reverse engineer it. And he said that literally the way to fly these things, it was apparent that he looked at his job was to work on one particular that he called the sport model, because it was like small, looked like it reminded him of a sports car. And he said that he looked inside the cabin of this disc that he was working on, and he said it had little bitty chairs in it with a little bitty console. And he said he was told or briefed that the EBEs, the biological entities that controlled them, literally placed their hands on the control panel and they became one with the ship. And wherever their minds wanted to go, that's where they went instantly. So that's what you have in Ezekiel 1. And it says in verse 21, when those went, these went, and when those stood, and when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. The likeness of the firmament upon the heads of the living creature was the color of the terrible crystal stretched forth above over their heads above. Let's see, where does it talk about how fast they went? They basically were as fast as lightning, because they would run and return without any acceleration, without any deceleration. They would just instantly be in one place, go to the other, and then back again. No deceleration, no. And he said, if you put a human in there, you're going to kill him. The forces of gravity and the laws of physics are going to kill him. Let's see here. What else can I share with you? Okay, here's another article. Here's a statement by Professor Stephen Greer in a video that he made, an interview that he had. Let's see here. Where can I pick this up? This is the transcript from a YouTube video. And he said, think of, well, they see a UFO and they're thinking, well, it's kind of like a 747 and they can be fully materialized like that. But if they are, you'll notice they have no seams. The light coming from them is not like light of this world, because everything is so pure, because the way they materialize and the way they even manifest. Spacecraft is through a type of manufacturing where the tonality a tone is set deep up, emanating from the conscious astral realm, and it comes from there into three-dimensional manifestation. So even the physical materials and lights and metals are incredibly pure, more pure than you can make even in the vacuum of space. And I know scientists who have studied some of the remains of the craft that we've, after we, let's see here, if they've been materialized and we've shot them down and destroyed them, that the materials are unbelievably pure alloys and pure stuff. And that's why the light that you see when you're on these expeditions looking for these UFOs, when you see these objects, it doesn't look like a light from a flashlight or a light from a headlight or a house window. It has this extraordinary radiance and purity and crystalline quality to it, I think. They're alive. They're absolutely alive, which is another thing to remember. One of the things I introduced is the idea of conscious nanobio machines, and that is that the ET crafts are an extension of the ET consciousness, and their life and their actual living crystalline objects that are conscious, but also are biological, that you get a sense that they're living and intelligent and conscious, even the craft itself. And it's almost like the level of artificial intelligence is so advanced from these civilizations that even the spacecraft have a living, conscious quality to them, which they do. And so it's simply not the same as a Lockheed Martin anti-gravity. I mean, what we do have classified projects that have studied this area of science, and it made anti-gravity things, but those things have an incredibly different feeling because they're just machines, and that the actual extraterrestrial vehicles, people say, how do you tell the difference between an alien reproduction vehicle or an RV versus an ET spacecraft? I said, all this like night and day. Once you experience both, as we have on these expeditions, there's really no comparison at all. I would like to tell our audience about something I saw, but it's important. I saw up in the sky about 50 degrees. It was like if you can picture a half of the wine cork, and it was about that size and shape of the light in the sky, and the top was half black, gray, and white, but it was downward streaks on it. At the bottom half was cream colored. I don't know if he's going to continue to talk about this or not. But Greer basically said the same thing, that these craft basically were an extension of the biological entities that were in them, and that in the Bible, the wheels and the chariots, the angels, were one. The wheels were as alive as you and I are. And this is God's word saying this. Now, are we making smart cars? We're trying to. I guess we give up trying to make smart drivers. So we're going to make smart cars. We're going to make cars that at some point the AI will be so high and so great in intelligence that it will be self-aware. Not even animals really have the same type of self-awareness that we do. Now, animals know when they're hungry. Animals know when they need to go potty. Animals know when they need to scratch themselves, lick themselves, mate. They know those things. But they don't have the same idea of self-awareness. They cannot picture themselves as part of the universe, part of God's creation. They can't fathom God. But these discs do. They're alive. And they're very real. Now, this article came out. I mentioned it couple months ago. It was put out, and then the next day they rewrote it. Because apparently they weren't supposed to say this. Let's see if I can find a date on this. This is from popularmechanics.com. The Pentagon has UFO vehicles and materials. This is not from ufotoday.com or anything. This is from Popular Mechanics. The Pentagon's on and off again once covert UFO program is decidedly back on, and it will soon reveal some of its findings to the public. An astrophysicist who consulted on the UFO program confirms the government possesses materials from, quote, off-world vehicles not made on this earth, unquote. The news comes on the heels of the Navy's official release of 3 notorious UFO videos. For years, the U.S. government has repeatedly changed its tune regarding its official involvement with UFO research. As recently as February, a Pentagon spokesman told Popular Mechanics that while a government program did investigate unmanned aerial vehicles and other unexplained aerial phenomenon from some time last decade, funding dried up in 2012. But when the Popular Mechanics thoroughly investigated the covert program, multiple sources said it's still ongoing to this day. Now, a news report in New York Times confirmed those accounts. The government's UFO unit currently resides in the Office of Naval Intelligence, not the Oval Office, where it, quote, deals with classified materials, per the report, even though the unit itself isn't classified. The Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force is meant to standardize collection and reporting on sightings of UAVs and publicly divulge at least some of its findings twice a year, according to the Times. So, we have an official story now. Not something made up. Not something that can't be checked out. Because I get a lot of stuff sent to me that people just make stuff up. They just make it up, put it out there. Nobody even bothers to check whether or not it's true or not. Somebody asked me today that the rumor now is Facebook is going to deny us the ability to post scripture on our Facebook post. So I posted scripture yesterday on my Facebook page. And I wrote them back and I said, well, apparently that's not true. People, and YouTube still hasn't gotten back with me on whether they're going to put my video back up or not. What I preached in Pea Ridge, Arkansas last Friday night was so heavy in my heart. I mean, it's been that way. Heavy, heavy heart. Because so much lies are being told on the left wing and on the right wing that I have absolutely no idea on some things what to believe and what not to believe. So don't get angry with me when you send me stuff and I don't think much of it. It's usually going to be because the claims that they made, they did not back it up with any evidence. None. No second witness, no third witness, no documentation, no proof. Anybody can sit in their car, their kitchen, their living room, their bedroom, their bathroom, and make a claim on the internet. Anybody can. Doesn't mean it's true. Does not mean it's true. So people have some discernment. So we know the government now is admitting that they do have pieces from UAPs. Well, that's what Bob Lazar was saying all the way back in the 80s. He said he was asked in this latest documentary that was done about him, Bob Lazar was asked if you could go back 30 years now and not do that story, would you? He said, definitely. He said, it's ruined my life. It's absolutely ruined my life. He said, I'm not a UFO guy that goes to UFO conventions. And he said, to me, the travesty was that we're working on technology that could literally change this whole world for the better. We're talking about power sources that we wouldn't need to burn coal. We wouldn't need nuclear fuel rods. We wouldn't need to be consuming oil and gas and polluting the environment. We wouldn't need any of this stuff. And he said it's being hid from the rest of the world. He said that's an atrocity. So he came out and said, yeah, we've got them. Colonel Corso, writing the book Day After Roswell, said, yes, we not only have them, we have successfully reverse engineered some of the material from these craft in order to benefit not only the military, but mankind in general. We have it. So now, here's the article that really gets my attention. This came out yesterday. Navy, let me see if I can put it up on screen for you. You'd like that, wouldn't you? Here we go. Get over there. Navy UFO patent documents talk of space-time modification weapon. Navy spent 3 years and considerable sums of money testing the Pays effect. May have transferred the program to another agency. In our continuing investigation into the bizarre inventions of Dr. Salvatore Cesar Pays, an enigmatic aerospace engineer who works for the U.S. Navy, the war zone has just obtained a wide range of documents. See, that's what I look for, is documents. Actual proof that what you're claiming is documented and provable. A wide range of documents dealing with experiments that the Naval Air Warfare Center Aircraft Division, NAWCAD, conducted to test the core concepts of technologies underlying its seemingly out-of-this-world UFO patents. These same patents were vouched for by the head of the Navy's aerospace research enterprise, who cited Chinese advances in similar technologies as one of the reasons why the Navy was filing them. In other words, the Navy found out the Chinese were working on the same thing, and they said, uh-oh, we've got to get ahead of them. Now, when it says space-time modification weapon, let me try to explain what that means. Let me do it this way. Genesis 1. Take a Bible, Pure Bible Search software, whatever. Genesis 1:1. In Genesis 1:1, you have the fabric of our universe. What our universe is actually made of. 3 primary parts. Time, space, and matter. And time and space, and let me explain this to you. In the beginning, that's time, the introduction of linear time to this universe. Because everything that exists in this universe exists as a result of time that governs its existence. Time and space. We think of it like this. How long does it take to travel from point A to point B? So if point A is here and point B is only 500 feet away, then you could say it only take just a short walk to travel. You wouldn't get in your car to travel 500 feet. You would just simply walk it. Okay? So time and space are woven together just like the threads of a sheet or a fabric. What you do to one affects the other because they're woven together like a mantle. Can you think of a story in the Bible that had a mantle in it? A piece of cloth, a sheet. Okay? So, God, in the beginning's time, God created the heaven, space, three-dimensional space, and the earth, matter. Matter exists in a universe that can contain it, governed by the laws of time. So all three are woven together in a sheet, a fabric, a cloth, a mantle. Okay? So picture on this sheet, let me go full screen here. Picture on this sheet, you have like the sheets laying across your bed. And you have my side of the bed and Sweetie Pie's side of the bed, which is a lot bigger than my side of the bed. Okay, just saying. And there's space between us. Now let's say that you were in our bed, you were a skin mite. Okay, not a bed bug, but a skin mite. Skin mites are in everybody's bed. What they do is they live off the dead skin tissue that falls off your body while you're asleep. So actually they're kind of healthy. So anyway, you have a skin mite. Now this bed is huge. It's a king-size bed. And for the skin mite to travel from where you lay to where your spouse lays, well, that might take him years to get across there because he's a little bitty tiny thing and he just takes him a long time to get across there. So if there was some way that you could bring point A on the sheet and point B closer together, then the skin mite wouldn't have as far to go between the two spots. Makes it simpler for him, right? So there's actually graphics that I saw. Let me see if I can pull some of these up here. Here we go. Let me put that up there. This is called the fabric of space and time, and it shows you how they're woven together. So let's say that the universe can be bent. So that if this was stretched out, right here, here's a bigger version of it. If this was stretched out flat and you were here, this was Earth. I didn't mean to do that. If you were here, this was Earth. And then over here was some people that we wanted to get in contact with. We wanted to go to their planet. Well, if we traveled the entire distance of the universe, it would take us, let's say, 1 million light years. Traveling at the speed of light, it would take us 1 million years to get there. So then what's the point? But if you could bend and fold space in on itself, you're also bending time as well and matter as well, because they all go together. The fabric, that's what they call the fabric of space-time, or the fabric of the universe, is that these things are all tied together. So now, what if you put a bowling ball, a big, heavy bowling ball in the middle of your bed? And that's what, like, this picture represents. You see what's happening? Is that these points now are being drawn closer together because gravity of the bowling ball is bringing it down, and it's drawing these 2 points closer together. Okay? Now, there are verses in the Bible that talk about how God visits the earth. Psalm 144:5, bow the heavens, O Lord, and come down, which literally means God folds down and he bows heaven so that the edge of heaven dips down so that God just merely has to just take a step and he's on the earth. Okay? I love that, because that is exactly how the scientists theorize you could travel at warp speed. Warp means you're warping the fabric of space-time. You're drawing the 2 points together, and the time that it takes, the distance that it takes to reach the 2 points is smaller, and the time it takes is smaller, and the time will run different than it would for the rest of the universe. So now, having said all that, we now have a space-time modification patent. A machine that they say can be used to modify the fabric of space and time, to bend space, and using gravity to do it. Because gravity is practically the strongest force in the universe. Gravity's it. Gravity's everything. And remember what we said about the sun and all of the atoms. The protons in the center of the atom would pull down the electrons and pull them to themselves. But because they're just far away, all they do is revolve around the protons. Same way when we send a satellite up into space, or the space shuttle, the ISS, or whatever rocket ship we send up there, it immediately goes into orbit. It goes into a place where literally the Earth's gravity is propelling that satellite or that space station or that spaceship around the outer edge of the Earth. It's spinning it around and providing the power. The rockets aren't on. They use rockets to get into orbit. Well, once they're in orbit, the gravity of the Earth propels the ship around it, and it holds it in that place. It's the same way with the sun. So Bob Lazar, back in the early 80s, said that that's how those ET craft worked. And he said, here we are on Earth. We don't even know exactly what gravity is. We know that every molecule has its own gravitational force. And it's in smaller things, it's a weaker force. In bigger things, obviously, it's a bigger force. He said, here we are. We don't even know how gravity works and what exactly it is. But he said whoever designed this craft that he worked on not only figured that out, but they figured out a way to generate a gravity field to alter and warp space-time so that these craft could literally jump out of sight and be gone. And we'd never catch them. Ever. Now, with me, you guys know me. You know that if I'm going to believe anything, it's all got to match in the Word of God. The Word of God cannot contradict science, and then I will come along and say, well, I think I believe science here and not the Bible. I don't do that. If the Word of God directly contradicts something that the world of science has come up with, like evolution, I will say every time they're right and the Bible, or they're wrong and the Bible's right. In this case, this is what they've theorized as a way to go from one location in one galaxy to bring, literally, to fold space and time so that where we're going is actually closer than if we traveled that entire space. In other words, going through a hole like a worm, a wormhole. And so, was Bob Lazar telling the truth when he said, I was working along with other people on at least 9 craft that I knew of? Were the Zimbabwe school children lying? Were any of these other stories that I relayed to you today that describe how things work, do you think they were lying? And especially in the light of the fact that you can now see clearly in the Word of God that what they were saying is true. What did Daniel say concerning the Antichrist? Because remember, if you can alter three-dimensional space, you can alter the time that it's associated with. And is there any such entity in the Bible that would be interested in altering and changing times? Any such entity at all? Let's see here. Where is it? Where is it? You shall seek to change. No, that's not it. Here it is, Daniel 7:25. He shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. Now, some say that's 3.5 years, and that could very well be. But why? It makes me wonder why God didn't say until a year, years, and a dividing of a year. Why didn't God say it that way? Makes me wonder. Why did he say time, times, and a dividing of time? Why did he say it that way? I don't know. I don't have the answer to it. Now, you remember, I'm about done here. You remember I told you the story. I said, can you think of a story in the Bible where someone had a mantle and they folded it? A mantle is fabric. That fabric is time and space and matter woven together. You affect one, you will affect the others. In 2 Kings chapter 2, remember what happened. Verse 8, Elijah took his mantle and wrapped it together and smote what did he do? He folded the mantle together and smote the waters, and they were divided hither and thither, so that they too went over on dry ground. Number one, defying the laws of physics. Defying the laws of physics. Number two, creating a way using this mantle, which I think represents gravitational force, to cause the waters to part hither and thither on both sides so that Elijah and Elisha can walk across on dry ground. Not get their feet muddy. Their donkeys' feet didn't get muddy. Nothing got muddy. And he smote the waters, and of course the waters collapsed again. Elisha did the same thing. He received a double portion. So he took the mantle, folded it together, smote the waters. The waters parted exactly the way he said. Do you know what I think rivers, one of the probable and partial representations of rivers in the Bible are? I think I'll make you wait to find out. Is that cruel? I'll just go ahead and tell you. Rivers, I believe, in at least one symbolism, they represent the flow of time and the cycle of time. And Elijah, using the folded mantle to smite the waters, separated the rivers. And I think it's possible that that means time stopped. God allowed him to go through. I believe there is a waterway that divides the universe from the third heaven, and nobody can come across except the one who has the power to do such a thing. I believe that is Jesus Christ. It's good to be with you today. I have a headache now from talking. I mean, this is big stuff here. But I hope you found it interesting, because my whole point in all this is that everything that's going on in this world, you really can trust your Bible to tell you the truth. You just got to believe it.